So this is where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? This is the one. This is the one we're going to find out where all the money comes from. It's all fine. Don't worry. By the end of this session, you'll be fully informed. My name is Jen Topping. As well as being a consultant, I also write a Substack, because who doesn't have a Substack? If you haven't, you really need one. I write for producers, basically, about what I think you need to know to survive this age of internet disruption, which is going to last for quite a long period of time. So please do sign up. You'll be joining 5,000 other of your colleagues, both here in Hollywood and across the world. Right, enough self-promotion. It's a creator economy. You've got to hustle, right? So the world of kids media, as we all know, is exceptionally challenging. And in a way, it's long been the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the content industry. So as we know, there's multiple factors hitting the kids market: audience fragmentation and migration to new platforms, the convergence of all media, what used to be distinct buckets, now all sort of becoming one big amorphous mass, all bumping into each other. Ad funding, that downturn hitting linear TV and not yet being made up by the streaming market. Copper regulation, which we'll talk about in a moment, which in many ways has really sort of, dare I say, strangled advertising and commercial opportunities around kids' content online for possibly all the right reasons, but it does have a massive impact on how we can fund these businesses. And broadcasters and streamers' appetite for kids' content reduced. So increasingly, as we've just heard, we're really looking to the BBC when before there was perhaps more diversity and more hunger and more opportunities in the market. So bearing all that in mind, who or how are we going to make up the difference? And how can we ensure that we're building a sustainable, quality ecosystem to fund this high-value, high-quality content that we want for our kids? So to discuss these issues, please can I introduce the esteemed panel. At the far end is Jonathan Chambers, Director of Investment for Generation Media. Nicky Cox is next to me, from Fresh Start Media and Children United. Daniel Hewitt, Head of Global Business for Moonbug Entertainment. And Jamie Spafford, who's co-founder, Head of Partnerships for Sorted Kids and Sorted Food. So as a quick way of starting, I thought we could just introduce and have a quick little summary of your businesses and why you're here and what you want to bring to the table, and then I thought we'd get into some of these issues. So maybe, Jonathan, if we could just quickly start with you and you describe who you are and what you do.
Sure. So Generation Media are a specialist youth and family-focused media agency. We help brands connect with kids, family, youth audiences around the world, and it's our role to identify which platforms, which channels, which pieces of content are going to offer the best value for advertisers. And obviously, we've had lots of discussions this morning about what value looks like. That looks very different from an advertiser perspective, dependent on those objectives. It's our job to help marry those two things together and make sure that the content that's out there is receiving the ad funding it needs through the brand perspective.
Brilliant. Jamie, do you want to talk about Sorted?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jamie, one of the co-founders of Sorted. So we've been a traditional creator on YouTube for the last 16 years.
Is that a thing? A traditional creator? I love that.
Yeah, somebody called us the OGs of YouTube a while ago, and I think that just means the old gits now. So we've been doing creating content on YouTube all around food for the last 16 years, based on a group of friends who left school and we didn't know how to cook and fend for ourselves when we moved out to university. So started a conversation about how do we cook better food. That turned into creating content on YouTube, and we grew a community of 3 million people around the world who love kind of exploring and learning about the world of food with us. And then in the last year or so, we've started exploring Sorted Kids as a new channel, as the sort of 3 of the 4 of us co-founders have now become parents, and we've kind of seen similar challenges and issues that our kids are facing as they go through the education system that we went through, which worked out all right for us because it turned into Sorted, but we want to make sure that our kids and other kids around the world get a better start when it comes to food.
Brilliant. Daniel?
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm one of the founders of Moonbug. I believe it's one of the Baroness's favourite shows, Cocomelon. It's part of our portfolio. I left Disney in 2017, and with 4 other friends, we saw an incredible opportunity in the sort of creator landscape, specifically around content and talent that was telling stories and connecting with kids in a really profound way, and then using the platforms of YouTube to connect at real scale. And we were able to go on a journey and acquire a number of those 17 different studios, a number of them UK-based, And then we diversify those properties. We invest in them. I'm very pleased to say that there is no distractotron for CoComelon. It depresses me to have to say this, but there's a really passionate, incredible team at Moonbug that cares deeply about every piece of content that gets produced. We acknowledge at the end of every single one of those views, and we have a lot of views on YouTube alone. We're at over 11 billion video streams a month. It's a huge responsibility we take really seriously. But I'm also a capitalist bastard as well, I think was the phrase that was used earlier on, which I'm unapologetic about, honestly. I live in the US now, and I feel like coming back to the UK, especially here, I think we need more optimism. We need to be more excited about the opportunity that's available. I mean, my house burnt down in the US, I'm more depressed here. It's like, honestly.
This has taken an interesting turn.
So I see a huge opportunity. I'm keen to get into this with everyone because I see tons of opportunity for everyone here, and I agree with Prisha that the creative landscape in the UK is exceptional. It's second to none, and we should celebrate companies like Moonbug in the UK rather than. It's one of the best success stories in the media landscape. I'm biased, but I think it's something that everyone here should be really proud of. It's something that started in the UK that. Runs in the UK, Camden, a huge office in Camden, literally hundreds of people, some ex-colleagues in this room who are now going on and doing really brilliant, wonderful things, innovative media in the kids and family space. So,
thank you.
Sorry.
No.
Follow that.
Go on, Nicky.
Well, I run a
Nicky.
small production company called Fresh Start Media, and we specialise in making news and factual content for children. Uniquely, with all our presenters and reporters are children themselves. For the last 7 years, we've been making FYI for Sky News and Sky Kids. Very proud that we won the last 2 BAFTAs for children's unscripted content. And sadly, we're one of the victims of Sky deciding that they're no longer commissioning children's content. So we could either have gone home, but instead we decided to launch an organisation called Children United and launch our own online news channel for children called TVCU. And Sky are beginning the journey with us. They've given us all of our content that we've made to date, all the evergreen content. So we've built a channel, and they're funding daily news bulletin for us at the moment, and some documentaries. And now our challenge is to make a way of that succeeding commercially. The BBC's Newsround obviously does an excellent job, but no democracy relies on a single news provider, and children shouldn't either. Media literacy depends on being able to compare sources, to question, to understand how news is made, and relying on one news provider for that isn't good enough for adults, and it's not good enough for children either. So we need to find a way to get some money out of Jonathan and survive.
Well, to that end, I thought this conversation would be, rather than talking about all the problems, we should also look to what are the solutions and what are the opportunities out there, especially from the wider content market, because there's a lot going on in the wider adult content market that may actually have direct relevance to the kids. Before we get into that, we all talk about copper. It would be great to hear from both Jonathan and maybe Daniel, in practical terms, what that means, because people say, "Oh, copper, that means you can't monetize it." But what does it actually mean from an advertiser or from someone who's trying to run YouTube channels targeting a kid's audience?
Well, if I speak from the advertiser perspective first, I'm sure you have probably a similar, or maybe even a different view on this, Daniel. It falls into 2 tranches, really. If we are talking about children's brand trying to talk to children's audiences, many brands around the world are very, very familiar with copper and GDPR compliancy. Our agency is set up, and all the partners we work with are set up to comply with all of those regulations. We don't need personally identifiable information to succeed in the advertising space. There's lots of means in which we can focus on the outcome to evaluate success. However, when it comes to larger brands outside of the directly targeting children who may make use of kids media, kids content, there is apprehension about using it. One, because of brand safety scandals that we saw in the past decade or so. But equally, the advertising ecosystem relies on data. And data is the real fuel of advertising success at the moment. And where COPPA and GDPR come in is it removes that data from this key sector, this key ecosystem of media. So it means that in a lot of plans and a lot of boardroom decisions, children's media is invisible. It means there's plenty of funding that could be out there that might funnel into children's media, which is just being avoided because it's too scary to try and circumvent those regulations. But, I mean, the optimistic side of me, and again, we need some more optimism, is actually the way that we measure media success is changing, does have to change, away from being, are we targeting the right individual in the right postcode with the right interests that we've decided because of Meta or Google telling us it is. It's about what is true success and what are the outcomes. Are we selling a service, a brand, a product? And as soon as we start to measure that in terms of key campaign objectives, actually that's when it's going to bring children's media back into relevancy again and actually start to reposition children's media as a lifeblood of the advertising sector. How do we reposition it? Like gaming has become a real focus, or YouTube reposition itself as YouTube is TV. These are all commercial successes which have brought huge advertising revenues into those sector. Can we do the same for children's media when we focus more on the outcome rather than the data that we're using to target?
Daniel, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, so the policy of COPPA is really clear and really important, that we shouldn't be capturing or using any personal data around children. Unfortunately, the byproduct of that means that the way that advertising dollars flow is that you increasingly advertisers are looking for outcomes and technologies that rely on personal data, which just means that even in the landscape of YouTube, if your content is made for kids, it means that you monetize a fraction of what a same view would be worth in a non-kid environment because of the limitations of data from an advertiser point of view. And then there's other things like if you wanted to build a subscription service or something like that, we can't capture parental email addresses. It's very difficult. It's very challenging. It also creates a lot of misinformation in the industry around whether you can or can't even advertise in a kid's environment. So a lot of
Well, to that end, so I think many people would have seen the announcement last week of this new joint venture between Hasbro and Animage, like saying that they're going to get into the world of advertising and brand partnerships, etc., and bring more money and unlock that. Do you see that as the start of new types of relationships or a continuation of some of these types of activities? How would you see it, Daniel?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think and we're all responsible for this. Anything that we'll all do to talk about the importance and the value of this media segment. Let's not forget that not that long ago, Lucy Sky and Nickelodeon and Disney, all the cable channels, they monetized pretty healthily around kids' content from an advertising yield point of view. And in fact, a lot of those advertisers, only 40% of the advertisers in those Nickelodeon, cable, Disney channel sort of viewership 40% were what you call kid advertisers, toy companies. All the rest would be your sort of your BTs and your travel and your automotive clients. And unfortunately, all of that advertising has pretty much fallen away, which is one of the reasons that the yield of advertising in this undeniably massive media segment is collapsing. So we've got some work to do there.
And in terms of brand partnerships, maybe Nicky, if you want to talk about your relationship with brands and how you see brands having a role within the creation of news and news content for kids.
Yeah, so it's a news and factual channel, and we're starting from the point of view that we want it to be completely free because children, Article 17 of the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child is that they should have access to news and information they can trust. And that shouldn't come at a cost. So that's a pretty high bar to set ourselves in terms of then how do we make this work. So yeah, we're working with brands. We're talking to people like NatWest to fund a financial literacy series for kids. We're looking at healthy eating. We're looking at travel. We're looking at sustainability. Lots of different things. And we've just done 2 live assemblies into schools. So we did one with the Science Museum. This week we did one with WWF and Steve Backshaw. And already we're having, now NatWest have said to us, can we do live lessons, and other brands as well who are keen to kind of look at how they can, align with issues that matter to them and matter to us. So yeah, that's what we're doing. But we're also launching the Children United Foundation, which is completely in order to find a way of funding news for children, which is not commercially really viable. It's not really commercially viable for adults news, let alone for children. But because there are lots of philanthropists, trusts, brands who actually really care about the fact that children should have access to news, we're setting up the Children United Foundation with an independent children's news fund, with the intention of creating our own fund, which will fund rolling news for kids. Taking out of the commercial space, but making it philanthropic.
I should add, I think that some people might want to hear about the Children's Content Fund, but we're not going to talk about that much here because you'll have a session after this to discuss it, so we're sort of bypassing this one. Jamie, thinking about brands in the wider food sense, not just around your children's proposition, you look at something like The Dish, the podcast smash hit with Waitrose, or Off Menu, again, just an incredibly financially lucrative business. How do you see brands playing a role within your wider business, and then thinking about what you're going to do with kids?
I mean, working with brands has always been a major part of our business, I think, from sort of like from the early days. And it's something that we've started to see declining a little bit. And I think our style of content is very different from the influencer style of content, which is where a lot of the money has gone. It's been, we've kind of seen that be a bit of a race to the bottom, I suppose, as the influencer industry has completely exploded. And so that's still a path that we're sort of trying to carve out for ourselves. Over the years, we've done a sort of a handful of major strategic partnerships with brands like Tesco and with Co-op that were done at the C-suite level that kind of sat above the commercial element for the brands. And they were on the same journey as us in trying to do the right thing. So with Co-op, we created an online cooking school. So it was at the time where the CEO, new CEO had come in, and he was trying to transform the brand, bring back the membership elements, and how it was all Co-op was all based on community. And that fit very nicely with our sense of how we saw the world. And we were hearing from our community that they wanted these kind of educational, learn how to cook type videos and create this online cooking school. And Co-op helped us do that until the commercial realities took over. And what started as, we don't need to feature any Co-op products, we don't need to do anything that has any commercial element attached to it. As soon as times get tough, it gets passed down the chain, and suddenly the commercial element starts to come into it, and they need to start seeing a return on their investment. That's not why we were there. That's not what we wanted to do. And so we're looking at the moment, and we're going into the sorted kids world with no commercial mindset at all. I don't know how we'll make money from that. I don't know when we'll make money from that. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of people are in a similar situation. But we have to believe that if we go about this the right way and create the right content and grow the audience to the right scale, then we should be able to find those opportunities to commercialise in the right way. And we're in control of that commercialisation rather than trying to find a return on investment.
I think that the conversation you've just had and what you've just said about working with brands is really true across the whole direct-to-consumer ecosystem, and it's very familiar to those working with adults, so I think that might be a big learning curve for people who haven't done that yet in the kids space. Jonathan, you obviously act almost as like a dating person. You're still a black for the brands and the content.
First time heard that, but yeah, I'll take that.
Very old. What would be your advice to people who want to sort of explore how you could potentially have a relationship with brand around kids' content? What would be your top suggestions?
I think, unfortunately, what Jamie just said there, in the world of marketing at the moment, there is a real race to the bottom. It is that proving return on investment is fundamental. Everyone in the room is having difficulties finding funding, but equally, if we look at brands and advertisers, marketing budgets are also being squeezed globally. It's a tough economic climate out there. Therefore, there's greater and greater emphasis than ever before on proving that investment with a piece of content with a channel, with a platform, is working more than ever before. So it's being open to having those conversations about proving return in some way, shape or form. And that doesn't always necessarily need to be a sale, but actually, are you moving campaign or brand objectives ostensibly forward in something that's quite provable in that sense? Because it's not just a case of doing something once, and it might be nice and make us all feel good, but it's actually proving things so we can repeat that investment, because that's the one thing that's becoming harder and harder, is securing that budget for the next year and making sure we can continue investing in those things which have worked historically. Because in this world, there are so many different choices. The fragmentation of media we're all very well aware of, but brands are beyond the stage of wanting to test and learn all the time. Brands need more concrete evidence that what they're going to spend on is going to return for them. We can't afford to continue testing for years and years.
So choosing a different part of the world, of the direct-to-consumer world, thinking about membership clubs or subscription models, which are membership clubs are increasingly having a moment in the wider ecosystem. So if I pick of one example, which is Time Team, hasn't been on air for 10 years, but they are making around 750,000 from their membership club online. So they've got 11,000 paid subscribers on their Patreon. And it's quite a lovely thing because it's about fandom. It's not just about I'm buying a service from you. It's because I want to belong, because I really dig archaeology. And then you've got things like Dude Perfect, the creator squad in the States, who have created Dude Perfect, their own app, which is a child safety, going back to Maddie's idea of a brand and a kite mark. It's got a child safe app where all their content sits, so you're not going to bump into any video nasties on YouTube or whatever, and that's them running a subscription model. How lucrative that is, that has not been revealed. In terms of that idea of basically taking money off parents to offer a service or a membership, Daniel, is this something that you see has legs?
In short, for us, not. I think we're really supportive of trying to help YouTube drive their subscription service, so that where families can afford that extra subscription, they can give their kids an ad-free experience, which I think is not a bad thing, but not everyone has the opportunity to make that decision. But I think there are lots of interesting ways to explore tying into sort of consumer products is definitely where we the licensing industry and revenue and the merchant consumer prices is such a traditional model, so the timelines are so long, and so there's a lot of disruption that I think can come into that space. And really, I think this group, if we want already, really thinking about how tying real world products to content and storytelling, I think could be is a ripe environment. And
dig into that further. What do you mean? Now, are you talking specifically about kids and toys,
or
it's slightly older than toddlers?
So there's a lot of sort of parental subscription going back to not only magazines but sort of like STEM packs and things like that. So there are a lot of very interesting startups in that space where they're looking for not only brands to partner with, but also storytelling and IP to bring into those experiences. I'll give you a crazy example. So we actually produce, we're in the second season now. So we're also a white label studio. We produce for other partners, a lot of toy companies. We manage YouTube channels. But the United States Postal Service came to us 2.5 years ago. So they had a comic book character called Mr. Zip from the 50s. And just to teach kids about what a zip code was, surprise. So we've produced now. We're in a second season now of Mr. Zip, and it's a really successful original animated show that's entirely funded by the United States Postal Service.
Who would have thought? So can you tell us about zip codes? No. Let's not. We're going too much into
grids,
detail.
like left, up
exactly.
and down.
Okay, well, maybe building off the back of that, and it's still sort of connected to that idea of fandom. And so actually, no, let me ask a different question first. Different ages. So obviously, Daniel, I'm assuming your target audience is overwhelmingly preschool?
Correct, yeah.
And your target audience is
7+.
7+. And where do you go? Who do you normally work with, Jonathan and Jamie? What's your dream target audience?
4 to 8.
4 to 8. Okay. And
we're straddling it from 2 up to probably about 15, 16, depending on the different brands that we're working with.
And of the things that we're discussing, is there stuff that you can imagine really working for that slightly older demographic that, it's the famous thing around kids, isn't it, that merch can really sell for that preschool group, but it's harder to do older. What's your experience of how you're considering these other monetisation opportunities for children?
I mean, to be honest, we're not really considering other monetisation because of that.
Because it's hard to monetise news in general.
One, it's hard to monetise news. One, you can't sponsor the news. It's got to be independent. It's got to be truthful and not affected by any commercial money at all. Hence the setting up of the foundation and the independent fund, which people can contribute to. And that actually will be a subscription model so that brands, high net worth individuals, philanthropists will pay a monthly subscription into the fund, which will then give us a fund in order to make the content with. But they will not have any influence over, we can't have McDonald's sponsoring a news bulletin and we can't, have anything nasty to say about fast food. So, we have to remain entirely independent of any of that kind of commercial.
And Jamie, did you choose that age demographic for a specific reason, the 4 to 8, or did you not look beyond the age of 8?
I think it's where we knew that we had the most sort of, honestly, parental experience. And we'd sort of seen our children start to go through that age, and knowing that we were building this from that very organic place of what challenges are we seeing and our friends seeing, then that's kind of where it initially feels like we can have the most impact as quickly as possible. But I can definitely see it moving out either side of that as well as things grow. We've started to have very early conversations about what a physical version of what we do might look like in terms of, so the sort of kids' content is about helping children explore the world of food. How can we help parents do that on a daily, weekly basis? How can we make that easier for them to do in their own homes? So we started to have some very early conversations about that. Again, I don't think that's very much a money maker in any way, but it is just about how we get that thought out there a bit wider.
Well, thinking of live events, and we think that, so this is my personal experience this week, was Phoenix Comic have a thing called Comic Con in Oxford. It's a 2-day event, and my son is 7 and he wants to meet Jamie Smart, who wrote Bunny vs. Monkey. This is all very personal. I sat online and I was 2000th in the queue to try and buy a ticket, and it sold out in 5 minutes. So I have one very disappointed 5-year-old. Live events seem to be quite big business. If you look at a podcast like Off Menu, they have sold out 3 nights at the Royal Albert Hall, so they're going to do $750 in ticket sales, gross ticket sales, plus they monetize the podcast with advertising and sponsorship. Where does live events, pop-up experiences, where does that fit within this new ecosystem around kids' content? Daniel, do you have any thoughts?
I don't know if is there a groan if I say Blippy is one of our probably wrong crowd. We had to.
It's a tough niche.
We had to clone Blippy for live events. So there are currently 4 Blippies cast to be able.
Do they travel together, or is that impossible? They're like the royal family.
Never seen them in the same. They're never in the same room together. But that's so that we can manage the volume of content output that we need to do across core episodes. So everything gets uploaded to YouTube. The content that's available on Netflix is the same content that we distribute on YouTube. It's all nicely, but then there's shorts, but then live events, meet and greets. We did a Macy's Day Parade meet and greet. That was a lot of security was required for that. But I think it's actually a really great area. And it sounds like you're doing some really brilliant things with the Natural History Museum or some other places. But I think parents are. And I think something that we've heard earlier on is as much as there's a crisis around what's available for kids, I think parents have never felt more under pressure, more judged, more. There's a sway. Everything they do is either wrong or not right enough, and so I think trying to find spaces where they can connect and bring their kids' favorite content and connect in the real world is a really powerful moment for families.
Yeah, no, I mean, if there's going to be a social media ban for under 16s, they're going to need something to do and somewhere to go. So, yeah, I mean, we're looking at doing kind of live cinema events around themes with some of our content and having guests and inviting schools and families along to that kind of thing. We're also kind of doing we're joining up with Kids' Rights organisation who publish the annual Kids' Rights Index, and they host the International Children's Peace Prize. So we're looking at doing more events with them on the back of that, like Junior COP and Junior Davos, and also we're looking at setting up journalism hubs around the world actually to teach children about media literacy and critical thinking in news and how it's provided, and to teach kids to make the news themselves as well. So it's not exactly a live event, but live experiences.
If I could jump in as well, just on the event side, I think what it also provides is a nice, almost undivided piece of attention towards that piece of content or favourite brand character, whatever it might be. And that's, again, what advertisers are looking for. It's an attention economy, and it's so fragmented. So if we can find a space where audiences are willing to engage with a brand, a personality for such a sustained period of time, that's where advertisers are also looking. If we look at the WARC report for 2026, it's estimated that over £50 billion is going to be spent on advertising in the UK, and one of the fastest growing sectors is events and experiential. So advertisers are following where audiences are, and audiences are definitely clamouring out for more live, shared experiences.
And Jamie, you said that live is part of your sort of core part of your revenue for your overall business. Could you talk us through what you do and how much of your business, how does it divide roughly between all your various revenue streams?
Yeah, so we've explored live quite a bit as part of Sorted Food for the last 5 years or so, and actually we started with a physical live show. We took over Shoreditch Town Hall for a weekend, and we put on 3 performances. But the interesting thing is our community is so global. We don't have a real localised central place to bring people to, and we are a small team who focus on creating online content. So as well as putting on a stage show, we also live streamed it and charged tickets to watch the live stream. And what we discovered at the end of that was that the people who were in the room and sold out the Shoreditch Town Hall paid for the stage show and the hire to actually happen, and everybody who watched online funded everything else around it. And so for the next 4 years, we've done 2 shows a year, which are purely online. We lost the physical element altogether, and we actually took over completely different places and created a whole weekend live show, to the point where we've taken over castles and done traitors in a castle. We took over Gloucester Prison last summer. Christmas, we put on a whole murder mystery weekend, all built around Sorted food formats, which are challenges and games and cook-alongs with that storyline happening underneath it. And people spend the whole weekend with us as part of that, which is incredible. And it's it feels like a real privilege to actually, that people would spend that much time to do that. It's still a very small percentage of our overarching audience. We would love to find a way to bring that to the wider audience, but we haven't found the commercial way that we can do that through advertisers and things like that. And actually, we're in a little bit of I suppose, a chicken and egg place where we know how many people will pay for the tickets. We don't know how many people would watch the whole live weekend if it was free. And so the advertiser's saying, well, how many people would you get along to? We're like, I don't know. We're in that very much chicken and egg place for it. But to bring that to the wider audience would be incredible. And then thinking about how that could translate to kids' experiences, which could, I think, probably start physical, because I think that's the best place that we would be able to create an immersive, engaging, exciting experience that would get kids really excited about food.
Amazing.
I think you've raised something that's also is thinking about the global audience, and I think it's, so everything that we do, we immediately translate into 26 languages. So although it's Camden and an amazing team there, that entire business and that team is, everything they do is from a global perspective. And I think that's really important. I know that there's concern about the infiltration of American accents into the UK, but there's no reason why, with the that everyone here shouldn't also be thinking globally to begin with, because the reality is if you can connect with a family in the UK, regardless where they are, that will connect with a family in another part of the world. I think yes, culture is all important, and representation and diversity, all of those things, 100%. But at its core, if the story resonates with a 4-year-old or an 8-year-old, in wherever, Birmingham or Lincolnshire or Cornwall, it will connect in Mumbai, it will connect in Brazil, it will connect in all of these other places. And so that you can't just think about your UK viewership, you have to think about every single child on the planet. So Gen Beta's just gone, haven't they? So that's 2 billion.
Yeah, exactly.
Gen Alpha is coming now. That's another 2.5 billion. That's your consumer. Is it the other way around? Sorry, I think. It's big. There's a lot of them. That's your consumer. There is enough, and
yeah. Well, that's what direct-to-consumer is, right? That's what the internet is a global platform.
Yeah.
But at the same time, trying to maintain that localness is very tricky. Thinking about short-form content, so I know we had the conversation earlier about smartphones and devices and the age appropriateness. Putting that to one side, if that's even possible, knowing that Disney's getting into vertical content, Netflix is looking to do vertical content, every broadcaster is talking about it for a maybe slightly older demographic, but still the teen market. Increasingly, vertical content is going to come to the TV set. So Instagram has launched a TV app in the States. So it's watching reels on your television. So it's like that, but in that. And you'll see more and more of this type of content appearing on the television set. So even if your kid doesn't have a smartphone, they'll still have access to these apps on TV. Where does vertical content sit in your mix?
Well, our Children United TVCU content has both. So you come in at short form content and it's the same scrolling as you would get on Instagram. And if it's a story they like, they swipe right and then they get the full length film. So they can choose either way. Anyway. Yeah, so we do both.
And Jamie, where does it fit for you?
Purely only for the parents. So we have sorted kids' Instagram accounts and YouTube Shorts content, but it's only aimed at the parents in terms of how do we get the kids more excited and interested in the world of food. The kids' content itself is 16 by 9.
Great. And Daniel, what's your take?
Yeah, look, I think we're where the audience is spending time. So we don't distribute content onto platforms like Patricia, so with the BBC, where children shouldn't be. So we're not, we're not encouraging. That's purely a parental engagement platform. But for YouTube and hashtag Shorts on YouTube, where there is a kid's environment, from a brand point of view, we're absolutely there. There is zero monetization, and it's currently 30%, I think, of our total views are happening there. But it's nothing. But look, I think along the short. So yes, but we will look at Netflix and Disney, because they have announced, and I'm sure that they'll be looking at that format because kids are enjoying it. But I'll sort of also bring back to what a lot of people talked about earlier around just quality content and discoverability, and what we deem good. We bought one of our early acquisitions. It's going to be a really good groan. Was an unboxing channel that we acquired, and so if anyone has any creative sort of sensibilities or what's the right word, like
Taste.
Thank you. Yeah. If anyone has any creative taste, they will know that.
So sorry.
No, it's totally fair. But it was a chat. It was like. I'm actually, I don't work for YouTube or Google. There's a lot that needs to be improved. But just to again look at where they can make it. So unboxing channels, undeniably popular for a long time. If you were to give a child an option of like, hey, you can watch, this well-produced thing over here, or you can watch another kid open toys all day long, What are you thinking?
Yes.
And so they do. To be fair to YouTube and Google, that content is now, you cannot find it. It's basically disappeared. And all of those channels and families that were filming their kids 24/7, unboxing content, that's pretty much, that genre of content has disappeared. So again, in a world of optimism and the algorithm and YouTube continues to be on a really amazing journey. And I think for all things considered, and there's a lot that needs to be improved, there are these little signs that they can get it right.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's
and shorts, I think, is part of that. I think there's a lot of fear and apprehension around shorts and kids, and it's all happened really quickly, and it's there. I think and hope it will evolve.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that there's I guess it's a question for everyone, have we been, some of the conversations which, for over 10 plus years we've all been having about the business model and the algorithms and the platforms and the role of the broadcaster and the government, and we're all sort of still having those conversations, aren't we? And I thought it was really interesting hearing from the guy who worked for Meta. We talked about, what turned their head was $1 billion, available audience. To put it in context, the UK TV ad market is 4.7 billion. So, that's a quarter that you would need to be able to demonstrate on a global basis. Netflix global income is 45 billion, 1.5 billion of that is video ad income. YouTube's ad income is 40 billion, so that excludes the subscription money that we were just talking about. But Meta's Reels ad income, no one really talks about it, it's 50 billion. They're making more money than YouTube, and they're making more money than Netflix when it comes to ad income.
And don't forget, Google and YouTube have given 100 billion globally back to the creative community and rights holders since 21. And I think
Meta's, how much have they given back? Do you think? Good question, right?
not very much. Yeah, but 2 billion. I think 2 billion of YouTube's creator pool came to the UK. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, and there's another theme that came through a lot of what we've been talking about, is this need for agility and speed. And, where we're having conversations about YouTube, for example, but AI content is, if it's not flooded your feeds already, it's going to be flooding your feeds by the end of the year. What can we, and then you add on that there's court cases going on in the US about addictive design of some of these apps. There's, the tech companies pivot by design anyway. It's not a mistake. It's a feature of how they operate. And then there's all these talks about social media bans. How can we collectively plan for a future where there is that level of agility required, knowing that the market's going to change? I don't know. Jonathan, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's a fundamentally very tricky question, because we often say things move at the speed of culture, but I think now culture is more and more being dictated by tech companies in some way, shape or form. And it's how do we as a collective turn our heads, and we said, $1 billion maybe will open the door. It doesn't necessarily change anything. We've heard calls for obviously stronger government participation in those conversations. But again, when these companies generate so much of a GDP for countries as well, it's a very difficult conversation to manage. So it's incredibly difficult when we're talking about a space that generates significant value for the economy, absolutely, but we're not talking in the billions that is unfortunately what's needed to access these gatekeepers at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Anyone any other thoughts, or is it just oh goodness, we just need to be better than this and faster?
I mean, Disney announced today, cease and desist with one of the So we have a piracy team that literally plays whack-a-mole on YouTube with sometimes scary
copycat content.
Copyright content, and it's with us. I think. Yeah, we're moving slowly and putting the creative team, the storytellers, and letting them test with the tools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll throw it open to questions in a second, but before we do that, instead let's talk about just a different part of the content ecosystem, which is movies. So we don't talk about movies that much, but there's been a really big resurgence. Well, is it a big resurgence? It's a resurgence in the indie film market. So if I talk about one, the kids brand that you'll know, which is Dogman, that had a budget of 40 million and did 130 million at box. There's a film by a YouTube creator. He's a long-standing YouTube creator, and he's made a film called The Iron Lung, which is just a massive box office smash hit. And then there's a different one, again, different genre, horror, which is a film franchise called Terrifier, which cost 10 million, quite low budget horror film, and it did 90 million at box. And all of the trade press was like, where did this film come from? Well, they own a whole bunch of horror communities. They own a podcast network, a streamer, and a horror community network, and that they activated that fan base and got them to the cinema. So with that in mind, what role does cinema play within the kids' content market? And I know, Daniel, you've obviously got stuff in the pipeline.
I'm waiting for another groan. Yeah, so we're
we're going to see how many groans we can get.
The Cocomelon movie is coming out next year. We're doing it. We're financing it as independent films being made by DreamWorks. I'll get screeners for anyone who wants
for the Baroness.
But it's undeniable that having a cinema moment for kids and family is really meaningful in lots of different ways. It's a brand defining moment, and yeah, I think some of the examples that you gave there are brilliant, and there's more, and even if not, but looking on this on the streamers as well, you know, where so Cocomelon is moving from Netflix to Disney as well next year. You know, so that was a diligence process. I can promise you, Disney doesn't take preschool shows lightly. But that's if you now look at in the preschool space in particular, the two biggest shows on Disney Plus will be an Australian dog family and a nursery rhyme, neither of which Disney originated. So the theatrical moment that's coming out of publishing, but also out of kind of creator ecosystem is really exciting.
And if anyone knows, Jamie Smart, Bunny vs. Monkey, my 7-year-old would like a film, please. Just putting it out there, I think I've told everyone that. Why don't we have some questions, if anyone's got their hand up? I think there's one up here.
Hi, Paul Maharbis was. I don't have Jamie Smart tickets, but I do have the Robert Deas tickets. But unfortunately, I'm using them. So fastest finger first. Just a question, and really, I suppose, Daniel, if you can, sort of pick this one up first. What do you think is the advantage of distribution strength in sort of in social distribution in YouTube, etc.? Because obviously, Moonbug, you rapidly sort of consolidated, became really big. Are the benefits from that? What are they, and does that offer any lessons or tips that we as an industry should be deploying here to start leveling up, I suppose, against the to commercialize properly from YouTube, etc.?
So I would say to any IP owner in the kids space is you have to have a YouTube presence, and you have to be thinking about how your content pipeline or you're using the catalog in a way to grow and sustain an audience, and not think about that in traditional seasons, but even thinking about shorts and cut downs and working in an agile studio way as cost effectively as possible to build an audience there, because everyone here knows how to make great content, and there is an audience for that, and it is on YouTube, and it does. I know Maddie's been working so hard on her channel, and it will come. If you look and talk about Mr. Beast's success, but it's actually interesting. If you go onto YouTube and you go to Mr. Beast's channel, you can go back in time. You can filter by oldest, and you can see how awful he was for years. And he talks about this. He uploaded multiple videos every week. I think he started uploading, I want to say...
He did it for like 6 years or something. It was really long time.
Two or three videos every week for 6 years before he made $1.
Yeah. Other questions? Here? We've got one down here in the jumper. There's something that I don't know if anyone's reading Doug Shapiro. He's a very cerebral writer who used to be at Turner. He's writing a book called Infinite Content, and he's releasing it on Substack, and I would really urge you to read it. He has a principle where he talks about, in the age of abundance, which is what we're in, the value of content will go and drop down, so therefore content becomes at the top of the funnel for something else, which is a really hard concept for content businesses where it used to be the profit centre was the making of the content, and now it's becoming, well, the content acts as marketing for something else. So it's something maybe to bake into your thinking. Go on.
This is a question for Jonathan. Heard in the panel earlier about banning everything. So we know from, well, people can tell me, we banned junk food advertising, which took about £40 million out of our industry and destroyed pretty much ITV working with us. Children are fatter now. I was wondering if you can tell me, in terms of banning things, COPA, everyone's like, oh yes, brilliant thing. How has it helped children? How have children benefited from COPA? Because again, that pretty much destroyed YouTube living for many people when that came in. So what I'm trying to get at is, just banning stuff without a replacement for the good stuff children get is not a good thing. But can you tell us how COPA helped children? How did it help? How are they better off in the world?
The short answer is probably no. I think you're right. We're not replacing things, and I think it's a bit of a sticking plaster. It's a nice thing to be able to say we are doing, and it's all the right intentions, absolutely. So yes, we still adhere to that just because I agree, we don't circumvent it at all. But we've seen from the discussions earlier, we've banned social media for under 13s for all intents and purposes over the last sort of 10 years, the Online Safety Act. It's not stopping people from accessing it. We've banned junk food advertising. We're not stopping them from buying it. A further ban isn't going to help the cause at all. And like you say, what it probably does more often is actually reduce economic centres for the UK, which I would argue might do longer term more harm than good, because it's not creating a funding pool which might help with self-regulation, which would have essentially a better long-term effect. But I don't know exactly what I would say. Yes, this has definitely helped children because it's such a hard into sort of countenance, and actually is it helping parents navigate this space a little more potentially? But again, ultimately working out what the effect on children is, and again, this was great for Gen Alpha. We're now talking about Gen Beta. Is it still fit for purpose? Maybe. Will it be in 5 years' time with the influence of AI on things and the aggregation of content that way? Probably definitely not, is what I'd say.
We've got another question just down here.
Thank you. Greg from the Children's Media Foundation. A couple of observations. United Nations. Nicky, they desperately need to talk to young people.
Yes.
They were talking about it the other day. A couple of things. One is a thing that's going on in America that Daniel knows about, and that's the Coalition for Innovative Media Measurement, which we're as a member of the coalition, but we sit and listen, and a group of people talking about new ways of creating data to re-stimulate the advertising market. To ask Jonathan, are there ways of re-stimulating the advertising market if we can't repeal COPA, as somebody asked the Children's Media Foundation to do? I thought that, ambitious. We'll have a go. If we can't repeal COPA, what could we do to change the measurement system so that advertising works better? And my second question, because I've always got loads, is, does anyone on the panel think there's any opportunity for persuading YouTube to change the revenue split, given the COPA restrictions and the massive decrease in advertising revenue in the children's sector in made-for-kids content? What's the possibility of getting a change to the split?
Goodness. Should we start with the first question that might be slightly easier?
Yeah, so the measure, I'd like it to be easier, but I think the problem is because of the fragmentation and the different stakeholders and gatekeepers we have within there is no unified view as to what contributes, even a view, for example. So the way that Instagram or Meta or TikTok will define that is very different. So we're having to work with intermediaries and different data partners to create what we believe is a unified measurement system on that front. But this is a problem that the industry has been facing for years. So you referenced CIMM, we've got ISBAR working on Project Origin, currently. But again, just trying to get all those different stakeholders around the table to agree on what is gold standard is very difficult. We've seen recently the debate between YouTube and Barb, and obviously Barb started to measure. YouTube arguably threw their toys out the pram, but we'd also have to point some fingers at Barb and say, is your measurement system still fit for purpose? We do see it as a gold standard JIC reg, but it could be doing better, and certainly within the UK broadcast space, I do believe it undervalues somewhat the kids broadcast ecosystem. It's great for general trends. We know that linear viewing is dropping. When it comes from a commercial perspective, we're buying millions of pounds worth of TV advertising every year in kids' spaces, but I'd say a good 40 to 50% of the spots that we get delivered on our schedules back are 0 rated because Barb fundamentally hasn't kept up with the pace of change. That's not to derail them, it's very difficult to do so. But yeah, it's going to be very difficult to get all those key stakeholders to agree on one unified measurement, which ultimately serves advertisers and brands rather than serves themselves.
Jamie, can you imagine a world where YouTube will give you a greater revenue split on your kids' content over your adult content, non-kids content?
I think the challenge is, in general, YouTube is the only social platform where we make any money at all. They are the most generous when it comes to a revenue split in general terms for content. We've probably made a handful of pounds on Facebook and Instagram and things like that over the years. They don't share their revenues in the same way. And so I think in a way, it's slightly tricky to go back to YouTube and ask them to be more generous when they look around at the rest of the market and say, we're already doing more than everybody else. I think because of copper, the chances are that they are also making less money when it comes to the kids' content and the advertising that's there. And so, yeah, I think it would be a really tough ask, but it's not to say that we shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nothing to add?
No, I don't think so.
Any other questions? Up here?
I got the mic.
You got the mic.
Okay, my name's Martin Franks from at Astra Development. We've been running a YouTube channel for about 10 years based around our show that was successful quite a number of years ago called Grandpa in My Pocket. And this is an attempt to respond to Daniel's request for people to be a bit positive and to say that we run around UK cultural content. We have about 22 shows on our hub channel, and about 50% of our views come from the US, and about 20% come from the UK, and the rest from the rest of the world. So I don't think the issue is creating content with UK cultural accents, UK cultural references, UK cultural characters. It's a question of creating good characters and good stories, engaging characters and engaging stories. We're not working because of the structure of the way we're doing it, and I think we need to look at a much more commercial way of approaching it. But it's not that global audiences don't want British content; they do. So,
yeah, I mean,
congrats.
I would echo that. I mean, I think we've been incredibly fortunate to have Sky as a partner in our news for the last 7 years. But going forwards, we know that we need to globalise, and it's important that the world's in a bit of a mess, and we need children around the world understanding each other and respecting each other's cultures and beliefs, and that's the only way that we're gonna get a better world. So yes, while we want to export the best of British, we also need to import the best of the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Any further questions? Well, we've got 2 minutes left. Maybe if I ask everyone on the panel, if you were going to give one piece of advice, thinking specifically about the commercials, I'll just start with Jonathan and then work back. What would be your big piece of advice for everyone to think about?
I think it would be, talking from a brand perspective, again, focusing on outcomes and listening to what the commercial realities of brands and advertisers are and how you can help them achieve those marketing objectives.
Mm-hmm. Great. Jamie?
If possible, build the audience first. And scale that as much as you can, and then, like we are hoping, that the commercial aspect comes along and the opportunities will present themselves, but it's a much longer game.
Daniel?
I think your instinct is right. Create the thing that you're really passionate about, and so that's what we did. We looked at we could have spent money launching completely original IP but we acquired Little Baby Bum and Morphle, and these were literally husband and wife teams who had just had a passion that you just can't create that in a kind of corporate environment, a boardroom. It's not how it's made. It's made the way that you're making your show.
Mm-hmm. Nicky?
I would say, I think outside the box. I mean, we had to ask a difficult but necessary question. If children's news isn't possible to fund commercially, how are we going to fund it? So the answer was we need to broaden who takes responsibility for it. And so we're now working with, as I said, brands and hoping that's going to work. I mean, we've built the channel and now we're hoping.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Thanks to our panel.